And we're on. Hi. Before I go anywhere, I want to start with a really, really big thank you. You're probably here, you're probably watching this because you clicked a link in an email. Chances are that you have not heard from me in a long time. There are some people who signed up more recently who would have maybe noticed that the emails stopped coming about maybe 3 months ago or so, 2 months ago. This video is basically an apology, as well as a thank you, as well as a goodbye. I'm going to ramble and just kind of riff as well, partly making sense of things, figuring out my story, basically, of what even. um, and it's been a long time coming. This video's been a long time coming. But I really want to start by genuinely saying thank you from the bottom of my heart. I have met some of you. Maybe we had a video call, or maybe a few emails exchanged. And it had an enormous impact on me to know that you were there, to know that you were reading, to know that you were coming along on the journey with me. I had you in my mind when I was writing. It's weird writing emails and even just writing in general. It's really weird because it's this thing that's like super intimate and super personal and yet super lonely. It's just sort of you, like the actual work of doing it. It's never done, you know, with others. It's never like, well, I never did anyway. But it was so rewarding to get your replies, and even just to see that after so many months people were still reading them, like, it just blew me away. Genuinely, I was like, it's just, yeah. It definitely gave me a lot of courage to take risks and to do things, to show up in a way that frightens me, right? To show up for the people in my life and my goals and the things that I would claim and name, and the flags that I would plant. So yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you. Thank you for coming along. Some of you, this might be a bit confusing because you may have only gotten a few emails from me before they stopped. For that, I apologize. I essentially, it's a bit of a long story. It's a bit of a rambling story. But for that part in particular, I actually had my email system all set up. I changed it to a free account. It was just very expensive, and when I changed it, I messed up basically, and so the emails just stopped sending. And this is the apology that I've been meaning to send for a long time. I guess what I've got planned for this video is to tell a bit of my story, treat it like a bit of a vlog, life update sort of thing, and change direction, basically. Because I've had huge life changes over the past 2 months in particular, but 3 years, like, just absolutely massive life changes. And so yeah, so I'll probably lose. I imagine that most people won't stay to watch all of this. It's going to be quite long and rambling, I'm sure you can see from the time code. And so yeah, I just wanted to say right at the front, thank you. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for offering me your attention and your perspective and connection. I think that the internet is literally just a way to connect with people. We kind of make it complex, and we sort of build all these systems, and like there's like weird social media economic incentives to get likes and attention and all these sorts of things. It gets weird, but at the heart of it, I deeply believe that the internet is literally just a very, very powerful way to be able to find super niche, super like deep in the weird thing that you're into, find those people, genuinely connect to them. You know, learn about them, like get to know them, vice versa. Let them get to know you, let them learn about you and learn from you. And this that's what it's been for me. That's what Said with Courage has been for me. That's what the email system, the whole email system. I had like 70% open rates, which is like so crazy to me because there's something like 50 emails or something like that spread out over a year weekly, um, which is just so crazy to me. I poured a lot of my blood and guts into it, into Said with Courage, into let's just get into it. So I guess I'll just share a little bit about my story and where I guess yeah, what's led to this point and learning how to say goodbye. Basically, learning how to say goodbye to the promises that I made and the system that I built and the cadence. You know, it's been a long process of learning how to say goodbye and now more recently learning how to say goodbye to the career that I thought that I would retire in. I was absolutely convinced that I was like, I'll stay here. This will be my last kind of career. You know, I'll stay here and finish out my working life at doing suicide prevention. And I've said goodbye to that recently. I accepted a redundancy about a month and a half ago, which is like, I never would have imagined that, you know, and learning how to say goodbye to that whole career and embrace a different pathway, that has been so rewarding. So rewarding personally, like in my soul. I have stirred things in my heart that I didn't know that I had to stir. I've let go of things that I didn't know were holding on to me. And that's just over the past few weeks. So it's been like, man, it's been a journey. Let me tell you, it has been a journey. Um, Learning how to say goodbye with peace, right? Because as I said, suicide prevention, it's like this whole thing, you know. I've been obsessed. I've been like proper obsessed with suicide prevention. I've written, I think, over 200,000 words and published them online on my blog. 50 something emails sent out over a year. Some of them like, you know, really like long and detailed. The thing that email offered was a way of sharing a very personal journey, a very personal story, and very personal levels of kind of disclosure in a way where I could refine them. Like I wasn't doing, you know, I wasn't sharing the stuff that I was struggling with. I was sharing the stuff that I had struggled with in the past, but I wasn't exposing it to the wider public, right? So people who indicated, yes, me, pick me, I'm the one, I want to read it, right? That meant that they could opt out and also that I could still kind of share very personal stuff that potentially they could, you know, benefit from um, those experiences and those memories and those stories and those lessons. And the whole thing sort of started as an accident because I was in a training room learning suicide prevention first, and that shifted my perspective, being able to recognize like, oh, there are skills, there are levels to this. Like it's literally just conversations. I was always the person who was good at listening, and people were like, you know, that's the guy to, you know, at the party I'd be the one next to the crying person, you know. They'd be opening up and I'd be listening to them, right? Not that I made them cry. not not like that. most parties. All right, leaving that behind. That's really weird and awkward. Um, so I was the person who was really good at listening. I thought that I was good at listening, and I got told that I was good at listening. But once I started training at Lifeline, I realized, oh, there's actually levels to this thing. Like, you can really learn this in a much deeper way. And as a side note, I've come to understand that I literally don't know anything at all. Like, in terms of learning how to say goodbye, I'm sure I'll get to that I have been learning how to say goodbye to my identity and attachments and ego and like so many things that's a whole thing. That's a whole nother thing. But the emails were a more personal way to share those lessons that started. The whole thing started literally because I was in a training room and I was observing somebody sharing what they just recognized, right? They shared that, oh my God, trust is like this currency. To build trust in a suicide prevention kind of context, it's like, I actually have to build rapport, build trust, use that warmth and that compassion and use those micro skills in a way that actually genuinely creates connection. And I'm making deposits. I'm making deposits into the bank account of trust. And then in order to actually do the difficult thing and talk about suicide and make it like authentic and not like a box ticking kind of, cold, sterile sort of experience, but actually make it like a genuinely authentic from the heart of like, hey, with what you've shared, I do want to ask, have you had thoughts of suicide? And actually like be present with that and to give someone that space and let them actually like, I have. And not have to rush and not have to hurry and like solve it and rescue them or anything. But wow. Tell me about that. To hold that space. That's what we mean when we say hold space. We just mean like no agenda. We're not in a hurry here. The agenda is connection first. The agenda is connection. I'm looking at a human being having an experience, not looking at a risk to be mitigated or a task to be managed, a imminent threat to be managed or whatever. People feel differently, and that's what actually leads to the safety, right? It's the crisis support that leads to the suicide prevention. So anyway, I'm in this training room, and at this point, it's a few years into my career, and now I'm getting paid, and I've been there for a while. I started as a volunteer, and so at this point, I'm here in this training room, and someone says that trust is like a bank account, and I see the light bulbs go off in people's minds. I'm like, I can see the lights going off for people. They're like, oh my gosh. Right, because when we ask about suicide, when we ask about safety, when we ask these tough, really tough questions, what do? We withdraw from that bank account. We have to have built up enough trust through genuine connection, through authentic relating, through like presence, through being actually present, dropping the ideas of, man, I have to help this person. Like, oh, I've got to, if I can just give them some resource or some like whatever, all of that's lovely, great, that's what you want. But what do they want? What do they need? 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, they just need someone who's actually listening. And so that recognition about trust, I was like, oh my God, we need to share that. Like, how can we like capture that and share it? Like, are we allowed to share that? Write it into a thing, like send it to everybody. Like, I watched everybody's light bulbs go off. Like, trust, it's like a bank account, deposit, withdraw. And the answer is no, we can't. There's not really an appropriate way to share something like that. That's, the language is very risky. You know, people might take the wrong meaning, and then, you know, when you're thinking about like the perspective of a huge organization, what I've come to learn through this career, you know, I've been there for 10 years. When you're thinking about the perspective of the huge organization, you're constantly balancing the needs of the individual against the needs of the organization. It's this constant balancing act. And the answer was simply no. And I was like, oh, I don't understand why, but can I just share that? And that's how Said with Courage was born. I literally was just like, what if I just made a blog and I can just say whatever I want, right? It's just a blog. So long as it's obviously respectful and within like professional-ish enough bounds. And if I position it the right way, where it's like clearly, you know, my experience, lived experience, I didn't even have that language back then, and like peer work and all that sort of stuff. This was like 5-6 years ago. But anyway, that's how Said with Courage was born. And then out of that, the emails eventually, because it was like, what's a more personal way to kind of connect and deliver more value basically to people? And man, it has been a journey. Learning how to put myself out there and make content and be consistent and have goals and do public speaking and advocacy and like all of this stuff, that it's been such a journey. I've had massive ups and downs. And I think like I'll actually tell you a story. So in 2023, so 3 years ago, my partner broke up with me multiple times, literally over my writing, which is the weirdest thing to say, right? It sounds so silly, but trust me, it'll make sense. But she broke up with me over my writing, and there was just this constant sense of push and pull of like, I don't want to take you away from the thing that gives you so much, you know, meaning and joy. I never want to be that person who takes a man from his purpose, right? And so she's always had this perspective, and I've always been like, no, the answer is like, we just figure it out, you know, like how do we just figure it out? Which is such a weird thing to fight about, like saving the world the right way, you know, like we genuinely had so many fights about like the right way to make a big impact, you know, like that was genuinely the core of massive fights that we've had for years. And which is so strange. So we would have these big fights, and I would have to I would be wrestling with this, like, I don't really get it. I don't really understand what the real problem is. Like, why is this such a problem? Like, and I had this sense from my life. I had this sense from like just this impression that my writing was sort of just unhealthy, or that I just had like there was something wrong, you know, that there was something wrong. And I know not to do therapy from stage. Okay. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, there's a really important principle in public speaking where if you're delivering some kind of your own experience of like mental health, overcoming, you know, maybe, you know, domestic violence, like some kind of experience that might be really difficult for people because maybe they can relate and maybe it pulls things up for them. If you're doing that, then what's really important is that you share the stuff that you've been through and come through, not the stuff that you're still going through. That's for your therapist, right? So you don't do therapy from stage. And I understood that. I was like, okay, well, I can write these emails and share about the things that I've been through, because that's essentially what that means is you're much less likely to destabilize people receiving it, right? As opposed to if you are coming from a place where you're unstable in making sense of what your experience, then that's what others pick up about their own experience too. As opposed to if you're coming from a place of, here's what I've been through, here's the horrors and the nightmares, and here's also how I came out the other side. This is the little glimmer of hope of what worked for me and my experience. then that's what people receive too. They don't just receive what you say and the story that you tell, but they also receive how you tell it, right? So I'm familiar with that, and I knew not to share the stuff that I was dealing with currently through the emails, right? So, and I didn't. But the stuff that I was dealing with currently broke me multiple times. And my partner was the one who was paying the price. And it took me a huge amount of humility, and it took me learning a huge amount of gratitude and recognition, and just to finally grasp what price she was paying. Because I was not showing up the way that she needed me to show up. She had health stuff that got progressively worse. And I'm just gonna, I'll be right back. Just needed to adjust the curtain. So my partner had massive health stuff. We had surprise visits to the hospital regularly. You know, every symptom under the sun. Like, I mean, I'm talking, she had really bad migraines, so like blindness sometimes, forgetful. So she would like have this brain fog to the point where she couldn't even remember her name. Occasionally, she had heart palpitations, nerve pain. It was wild. It was a really hectic time. And through that, I was going hard. I was going hard writing, advocacy, public speaking. I was like saying yes to way too many things, right? And so looking back at it, it's like, man, isn't it interesting that I was saying yes? Isn't that really interesting that I was saying yes to those things? It's almost like I just had this compulsion. You know, I just had this like itchy kind of, it was like this urgency. And I did my best to manage that and to kind of, I guess, protect people as well as I could from that. Meaning that, for example, when I had the itch and I knew that I needed to focus, then I would actually like lock in, and I would kind of close myself away from people. And I would like sort of plan for that in the calendar and things like that. And like I was just doing my best to manage what I eventually came to understand is probably mania. It's probably some kind of a mania. I'm like not that fussed about pathologizing it, but it's basically just like a super energetic creative state that I've just learned to juggle and learned to kind of like, I can see that the signs early of it coming on, and so I just sort of make choices to manage it now anyway. It turns out that she had mold poisoning. Turns out that my partner had mold poisoning. You know, lots of confusion, surprise trips to the hospital, like, you know, lots of medical professionals scratching their heads saying, well, there's nothing wrong with you. Are you sure it's not anxiety? And super like just it was a time. It was an experience. I wanted courage, and God delivered. He was like, bet, I got you. You want to be courageous? Here you go. Circumstances within which you can shine, you know? So moved out. We moved out of the city. It was a couple of years ago. And my writing kind of slowed down. And that's when those people who were there from the start, that's when you probably would have noticed they were very spotty emails after that. We moved from the city. We moved to Kangaroo Point. From the city, we moved to Redcliffe. And it turned out to be really well. It turned out to you know, the perfect thing for Marissa's health. She's been on this massive recovery and healing journey literally since then. Since before then, to be fair, it started before that. So moved here, and yet I still had the itch. You know, I slowed down my writing, and yet I was still really struggled with writing. And I can't even describe it. Like, I can't even explain it properly. I couldn't until this massive shift. This like something happened, and Marissa and I, without getting into the gory details, I'm sure that I will share the gory details at some point. I'll probably just talk to her about it first. But something happened, and Marissa and I happened to find ourselves at our very first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. It was, we'd never been before, and which is hilarious that we'd never been. Like, I don't know how it missed us or how we missed it. We just missed the memo, obviously. But we found ourselves there, and so at this meeting, it was just, there was this moment where we looked into each other's eyes. We were there silent, just letting people talk, trying to be respectful, basically. Right? Like, we don't know what the kind of etiquette is. And we looked at each other after someone said something. They said, one drink is too many, but 100 is not enough. Man, we looked at each other, and I swear we both had the exact same thought. You belong here. I don't belong here. It was like all of a sudden, this idea of alcoholism was crystal clear. It was sharp. You know, it had never been in good contrast before. It had always just been this nebulous concept of like, okay, yeah, trouble drinking alcohol. So same, you know, I've had a terrible relationship with alcohol through my life, and drugs and all sorts of things. No, not the same thing. That, like, there is a thing called alcoholism. It's so clear being in a room of people who can articulate it with someone who fits all of those articulations, right? It was just like, holy crap, this is a thing. It was so powerful. So anyway, we had that recognition, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like listening, and I'm like taking it all in. I'm taking in these people's stories of overcoming and addiction and symptoms, withdrawals. And it was so weird because at the time that we were in there, I stopped writing 100% blanket rule, no writing 3 months ago, right? So 3 months prior to being there, I completely locked it in. I was like, Saeed, you're going to not write anymore. It's just this, it's too weird. There's something inexplicable and strange. And I was sitting there in this room looking at everyone, sharing their stories of recovery, of hope, of struggle, of overcoming. And I thought, I don't belong here. Like, I do not have these same troubles with alcohol. But I 100% relate to writing. Isn't that weird? I've never, like, I read about writing, I think about writing, I listen to podcasts about writing. I've been learning how to write for a really long time. It's how I digest life. It's how I make sense of things. Writing, obviously, is just really important to me. It's like how it just helps me make sense of everything. And yet, I've never actually come across someone who's like, I'm an addict of writing. But I fully related. And when I say that I fully related, I mean, I had been, for that 3 months, I had been irrational, emotional. I'd been like, I had writing on my mind all the time. All the time. It was this urgency. It was this itch. Like, I just needed to, and I couldn't even describe it, and I could barely even comprehend it. And here I was in this room, completely relating and connecting with these alcoholics. So weird. I'd never even heard of such a thing before. And so anyway, to fast forward, 2 2 months after that. It was 2 months later. Fast forward, and Marissa and I are talking, and I got struck by this memory. We'd gone for a walk, and we were walking. It was night. We were walking along this beautiful beachside, and the moon was shining. It was just this absolutely beautiful night in southeast Queensland, and she's sort of guiding me. She's sort of asking me questions. She's getting me into my childhood stuff, and I'm trying to figure this out. I've been scratching at this thing of like, what the hell is with my relationship to writing? Like, why? Like, what is this? There are no answers, let alone like, I don't even know anyone else who's asking this kind of question, let alone whether there's any answers. And I had this, she basically did a bit of IFS, a bit of internal family system. So she's sort of asking me some questions, and I had this memory unlock. And when I say unlock, I mean literally something I'd never remembered before in my entire life. Had no recollection of this ever happening in my entire life until right then. I was sitting, I won't get into the gory details, so I'll leave the details out. But I was sitting, I was young, and I was sitting on the dining room table, like sitting on at the dining room, at a chair at the table, and I had a typewriter. It was the first time that I'd ever like kind of seen one of those mechanical typewriters, with the ink and the ching, and like it's really fun, right? And I was playing with it, and I was writing that sentence, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy queen." It's got all the letters of the alphabet, and so it's a really good sentence to practice finding the positions. And as I'm typing, I was just like honed in on the typing. Like I was like, just, And as I was typing, things were going on in the background. I'll spare you the details, but ambulance were involved, right? And so I remember distinctly thinking, if I just type one more sentence, everything will be okay. If I just type one more sentence, everything will be okay. All of a sudden, everything clicks into place. The fights, the weird tension, the compulsion, the behavior. It's just so, I was just so weird. And trust me, I have apologized to her many times. I'm so grateful for, like, I couldn't believe it. Everything made perfect sense. I had been compulsively typing, itching to, like, be okay. I was just completely fixated, like, just a little bit more. If I just write a little bit more, everything will be okay. I feel like I'm kind of lucky that it was so obvious, that it was like, okay, this is actually definitely trauma. This is what they mean when they talk about trauma. This is what I understand it to be. And it was so clear, it was like neon lights, like dig here, X marks the spot. Like this is the treasure right here. And that was a year ago. So since then I've been learning I've only published a single thing in that year. Real thing. I did start typing again. I did start writing again. Very small, very, Keep it very small, keep it very low key. I'm not committing to big promises, right? That's been the big change, is that I'm just like, I've reorganized my website so that I can have a tiny little publication habit whenever suits my life. And I don't have to do the big 10,000 word essay deep dive that consumes my every waking minute for 2 months. Like it used to. And then wonder why I'd be fighting with my partner. He's very patient. So, all of that to say that this most recent, chapter of accepting a redundancy, and then stepping back from the job that I thought that I would from the organization that I thought that I'd retire in. It's just been a long journey of learning how to say goodbye. Learning how to say goodbye to the stuff that I was holding on to the trauma that I was carrying. Learning how to say goodbye to the identity that I was attached to. It's an identity that I worked really hard to build. Suicide prevention, I was very proud of the skills of learning how to hold that space for people. Something that I drew a lot of. And that's how it started. I only started volunteering because I wanted to feel like a sense of contribution, like something that I was doing mattered to someone. And life isn't just this meaningless, I can actually create something meaningful out of supporting people or being there for people. And that's the identity that as I said, I'm proud of. I was very proud of it, and I still am proud of it. And yet it was that identity which was so bundled and so tied to the things that nobody could ever have known. No one would have ever known to ask me the right things to help me get into that level of my hallway of mirrors, my mansion of memories, right? The spaces that have been unexplored, that all of us have, of things that we carry in our bodies that have happened to us and that have happened around us. We carry this stuff, and it informs so much of the choices that we make and the directions that we take and the opportunities that we see and the threats that we perceive, and how and what options we have to navigate those. And learning how to actually say goodbye to the stuff that I was so proud of has been extremely rewarding. I have found so much more grace for myself, for my loved ones. I've found so much peace that I didn't know that I didn't even have. Said with Courage I picked courage because courage seems like it was courage that I was looking at. I was looking at courage. But where was I looking at it from? Fear. Conditional love. Hurt. Pain. I was looking at it from guilt and shame. Everything that's below the line on the map of consciousness. Courage is the first line. Courage is the very first line. It's the first one right up above that line. And yet, I never paid attention to what's above that line. What goes beyond courage? It was never really that meaningful to me. It was like people would talk about it, and I've got friends who are like all up, like way, up on that line. They spend their life in integrity. They spend their life in reason. They spend their life in love, joy, enlightenment. I know people who are like often in those spaces, and to be around them, we spoke about it, but it just never resonated. I wasn't ready. My soil hadn't been tilled. because I was still hanging on to this boulder of, needing to write in order to make everything okay. So it's been this massive journey of learning how to say goodbye. And that all of that, everything that I just shared, that was over a year ago. So, up until this, accepting this redundancy. So, accepting this redundancy, it was the craziest thing, it was the weirdest thing. Like, 2 or 3 months ago, something roughly, my partner had essentially an awakening. She had a spiritual awakening, and without getting lost in what that means, to keep it super straightforward, all it really means is that the experience of being present in a meditative state is her default experience. That's her state. Like, she's sort of always in a default meditative state. And I wonder how much Louis is going to come across in the microphone. I think I might just pause it here and come back to finish this off after all the noise in the background. So, be right back. Okay, let's see if we can continue. So, where was I? Courage. He's a very small pup. 8-year-old small pup. Maltese poodle. So, very much the guardian of the entire street. It's funny. I feel like I can hear him wrestling in his nervous system. He's like trying really hard not to bark because he knows that he's not supposed to. And he does this like kind of choked growl sort of thing, and then he shakes. There it goes. It's so funny. We're exactly the same. Like, I'm exactly the same. I just happen to have more, masks and words and whatever. But same thing. It's just, yeah. I'm a more sophisticated version, right? But my nervous system goes off, and I just want to bark and shake. But yeah, it's been conditioned out of me. So learning how to say goodbye, a huge part of learning how to say goodbye for me, especially this year, has been learning how to say goodbye to Marissa, because the Marissa who I fell in love with and knew, and the chaos and the anxiety and the fear and the excitement and the depression and all of the other the addictions and the attachments and the drama. Don't even get me started on the drama. That Marissa is basically gone. She has embraced this whole different way of presence, this whole different way of showing up. And some people have asked me recently, like I often get asked by the people who sort of are close to us, like people in our business community and close friends, they sort of have asked me like quite directly, how are you? What's that like for you? And I think I can see where that question is coming from. Like I can tell that I would also have a question like that. And yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay with saying goodbye. I'm okay with saying goodbye to the things that I love, to the people that I love. I'm even okay with saying goodbye to the Saeed that I love. And learning how to say goodbye, learning to embrace that process of grieving and mourning and allowing it to let go allowing it to let go of me, um, it's been really freeing. Our life is so different. We have peace. We have peace. Um, I still have, I'm still in my ego, right? Like, I'm just because she's an ascended consciousness, like I'm exactly the same as that I was. I still create drama. I still stir the pot with like projections and like fears and things, but there's nobody for it to land on. Nothing. She just takes nothing personally, and she just recognizes that in the present moment, we're in the present moment. Um, and guess what that does to me? It makes it very easy to let go. It makes it very easy to recognize, like, who do I think that I am? Like, what is it that I think that I am? It's funny because I've done so many psychedelics. Like, I spent quite a few years abusing psychedelic substances. And every time that I had any kind of experience where my ego just kind of left and I was just like swept away in the bliss of the universe, it would come back worse, right? I would it would come back almost like with a vengeance. It was like, okay, you want to play? Let's go. And my arrogance would come back, and um, my attitude, like my sarcasm and my selfishness, and like seriously, I genuinely am not exaggerating. I have seen and experienced this multiple times where I would just, my ego would almost like put on a spiritual mask of like, yeah, I'm all good now. And as a result, I would justify getting away with, you know, doing terrible things to the people that I love and to myself. And it was just this really confusing roller coaster of an experience. And now, having witnessed my partner through her dedication, through her practices, I won't get into it, that's her story to tell, witnessed her journey and unfolding, continue to unfold. Having witnessed that, it has shown me that I genuinely mean it when I say I have no fucking clue, no clue about non-judgment, about communication, about listening, all the things that I've been teaching and preaching for years and years. The stuff that I've written thousands and hundreds of thousands of, words on, and like I've been wrestling with and chewing on and like turning around and turning over and reflecting on, and all this stuff. Like I built my own reflective practice system for crisis support excellence. I built it and I used it. This Notion template that I reflected on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of my own work. Every shift I would start and I would track and log, and I would look at my micro skills that I was using. I would look at I went like full autism on suicide prevention and non-judgment. And now I'm like, man, there are levels to this game. Seriously. It's different to what I thought. Everything is different to what I thought. So I'm learning to let that go, to say goodbye to that as well. And where does that leave the future? Where does that leave the direction of like what's next? I'm open. I'm open to finding that out. I'm going to keep the website up. I'll still use it and I'll still publish things. Probably it's just open as a resource. I've pivoted, like it's a little bit less suicide prevention focused now. It's a little bit more stuff that's more present and relevant for me in my life. And So more leadership focused, mentorship, that sort of thing. Sometimes I sort of might share a little bit about micro skills or trauma informed practice or whatnot, but um, I'm open. I don't know what it's going to look like. And this is actually the first time between this thing, this thing, this camera, these lights. This is the first time that I've actually taken the time to set myself up and to actually do all the things and create a proper like episode that I have been meaning to do since literally 2020. I got this equipment in actually 2020, and I've been meaning to do it that entire time. And not exaggerating, the only difference between now and then is that AI happened and I've learned how to use it properly. I've actually figured out how to get the most out of myself, treating it like a partner that I can wrestle with and who can help me think differently and show me things. That's the difference. So this is the first time that I've actually made a proper vlog episode, and that's not just like filmed on my camera, on my phone, or like just chucked it together and bunged it together and the audio's dog crap and like, we'll see. Maybe it's still going to be dog crap. There's like dogs barking and stuff, whatever. But I don't know. I'll see how I've really enjoyed this process. So I'll probably make more videos. Maybe I'll make more videos. In terms of career wise, like what I'm actually going to do now, what I'm doing next, I have been learning about something called intentional peer support. And it's a framework for a type of non-clinical support that people can offer one another based on their personal experience, which is like so different from everything that I've kind of found myself learning, mastering, training, recognizing that I'm actually a noob and then starting again, that whole process over and over and over again for years, right? It's very, very different because of all the clinical kind of aspect of it. So this is a totally non-clinical way of supporting people and relating to people. And I've started volunteering at Roses in the Ocean. So I don't know when that'll take time, obviously, the onboarding process and whatnot. I'll be volunteering back again in suicide prevention, and I'm pivoting in terms of work toward this whole peer work space, lived experience, peer work. It's basically where your own personal story is an important part of the sort of relationship, the connection, right? It actually plays an important part. And so that's about sharing safely. How do you actually learn to share your story in a way that's somewhat, it's got a purpose, it's got an intention. And yeah, I'm really excited about that. It's totally new to me and yet totally familiar, but in a way that just really resonates. It sits really well with me. So watch this space. Grab me on LinkedIn. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, definitely hit that up. As for the emails, I'm going to completely shut down the whole email chain, that little sort of long chain of emails that I set up. I'm going to shut that down, and I might just do broadcasts now and then. I might just do like a here's what's been happening recently sort of thing. And if you don't want to hear that, then feel free to unsubscribe. I've set it all to the free, all the software that I used to use and everything. It's all I've just made it as least expenses as possible, basically. So yeah, this has been me learning how to say goodbye to things that I never thought that I would and never saw myself saying goodbye to and couldn't have imagined. Learning how to embrace the process of that. I'll share one last story before I go. I went to an event the very day after, I fully was like, okay, that's the last piece of news. It's definitely redundancy is the option, right? Um, so the day after that, I went to an event. So I found out on a Friday that it was like, yep, that's definitely the best decision for me is to actually leave. And then on the Saturday, went to this full day event. It was this huge workshop. The guy shared this really esoteric perspective about wisdom and about life and inner wisdom and inner knowing. I've got his book over here. I keep looking at it. And I won't get into the details of what he shared about in this video. I'll do that another time. But he said this thing that really stood out to me. He said that in order to grieve, for the process of grieving to happen, we need the process of mourning to happen. Without the mourning, we get stuck in the grieving. As you can imagine, this hit me. Sitting there, the day after, I'm just like learning how to say goodbye, right? And it was just absolutely divine providence that the path is perfect. So, yeah, how do I wrap something like this up? Once again, a massive thank you. Thank you for making it, it's probably 1 hour in now. um, Thank you. See you soon.